known is that it's at least 3 point what? It's at least 3 point what? It's at least how many lines past that 3? Tell me in the chat. It's at least how many lines past that 3? Tell me in the chat. Yeah, it's at least 3.6. So that's our known significant figures. Now, what's our estimated one? So 3.6, but we still need to finish that up. What's going to be our estimated digit? Go ahead and tell me in the chat. 3.62 or 3.63 might be a little bit small. So let's think about if this line's a little bit more than halfway, then it would make more sense for this number here to be bigger than a 5. So what would make sense here? 3.6 what? 3.6 what? I see lots of people working in the chat. What should be my last estimated digit here? Awesome. I see Cody. I see Erica. There we go. Kamal in the chat. Yeah, it's a little bit past halfway. So instead of like a 5, we might put a 6. So 3.66 centimeters. Great job, everyone in the chat. Go ahead, give me a smiley face or an emoji. Actually, no, let's do green checks. Go ahead and give me a green check, everyone, if that makes sense. Green check if you understand that. Again, it had to at least be 3.6, and then we estimated one more digit. It was a little bit more than halfway, so 3.66 would make the most sense, or maybe 3.67. Anything that's a little bit past halfway. Right, waiting on green checks. Tim, Mallory, Jonathan, Alan, Noah, Edwin, Anissa, Jalen, Juan Carlos. Go ahead and give me green checks if that brain check is beginning to make sense. Looking good. I'm going to go ahead and check in Timothy. Make sure you are giving me green checks or responding in the chat if you can't see your green checks for some reason. Mallory, go ahead and please respond or give me a green check. There we go. Noah, waiting on your response. Noah. Green checks, red X, or respond to the chat. And Juan Carlos, go ahead and make sure you're responding. Looking good. All right, let's go ahead and keep on moving here. All right, everyone. So this is a reminder, please do not share contact info during class. Make sure that you are participating often and well and behaving appropriately. And don't forget that these are being recorded. So obviously, again, it's being recorded. So make sure you're being appropriate. So today is day 5 out of 60 of our trimester. We are in our second week of the trimester. Today we'll be taking a look at the scientific method and completing the 1D notes on the scientific method. So at this point, what I need you to go ahead and do is, oh, sorry, I'm missing an announcement up here. So let me go ahead and go back to the announcements from last week. Here we go. So this is a reminder that if you are new for this trimester, so Banks, Kamachina, Lamelli, Oliveira, Silver, and Tarosian, if you are new this trimester, please make sure that you go to your STAR 360 assessments today at 1 p.m. and tomorrow at 1 p.m. They're already on your live class schedule. Remember, you do need to do STAR 360 at both the start and end of the trimester because we need to see how you improve. So we need 2 data points for your reading and math skills, so start and end of the trimester. Everybody else, we only need your final score at the end of the trimester because you've already done a start one either in trimester 2 and or trimester 1. So everybody else, all of the old students who are not in this yellow box, you will just be doing it at the end of the trimester. Please do not do it yet because it will not count towards your grade. It's also not accurate data. So we do need to wait until May 25th, May 26th for you to do those in order to get the most accurate data. Go ahead and give me a smiley face or an emoji in the chat box if that's beginning to make sense. Smiley face and emoji in the chat box if you understand that. Again, new students today, tomorrow, and at the end of the trimester. Old students just at the end of the trimester. Smiley faces, emojis if you understand. Looking good. Thank you, Itati. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Cody. Awesome. All right, so today we're going to be able to explain the basic steps of the scientific method, hopefully something that you've seen before in any of your other science classes, but we still want to review it because this will help us to better be able to do a lot of our projects and stuff throughout this trimester. So we should be able to define and identify an observation, question, and hypothesis, as well as an independent variable, dependent variable, and constants within an experiment. All right, and we will be working on the 1D notes, so at this point I need you to go ahead and get those open and raise your hand. If you already have them open, just raise your hand right away. Let me know that you have have these open, again, you only get a few chances to show me that you are here and participating. Otherwise, you will not be able to get attendance. So please raise your hands or respond to me in the chat if I have not yet heard from you. Go, go, go. You have 20 seconds to get this open and to raise your hands. Again, if you want attendance during class, you do need to be working on your notes during class. You'll get notes credit at any time of the trimester if you do notes whenever, but if you want attendance, you have to finish them during class. 5 seconds, raise your hands. 5 seconds, raise your hands. Question for today. If we want to determine the kind of paper airplane that flies the furthest, what steps would we need to do? Go ahead and tell me in the chat, what are some things we would need to do if we wanted to figure out what kind of paper airplane flies the furthest? Go ahead and tell me in the chat. Well, you can't throw them unless you first have them. So what do we need to do? Yeah, we first need to make them, right? So we first need to fold them. Then what do we need to do? We need to throw them. All right, are we going to throw them differently? Are we going to throw them from the same place, different places? Are different people going to throw them? Think about if you've ever watched the Office episode where they had a paper airplane contest. What did they have to do to make sure that that test was fair? What did they have to do? Right, yeah, so you have to throw them from the same place, right? Yeah, you need to make different airplanes, right? Different airplanes. Awesome. Throw them all from the same place. Is it just going to be one person or should different people throw them? Tell me in the chat box. If we wanted to make sure it's a fair test between the different types of airplanes, should different people throw them or just one person? What would make it the most fair? Yeah, so the same person, throw them from the same place. The same person should throw them. Awesome. Okay. What about, let's think about how are we going to see who actually wins? How do you know who actually wins? Tell me in the chat box, or which airplane actually wins. What do you need to do to figure out who is the winner? Yeah, we need to measure it, right? So we would need to actually measure how far they fly. So measure how far they fly. Awesome. So these things all right here, if you were to think about designing a paper airplane contest, you would actually be designing the scientific method, which is why our first project is all about paper airplanes, because pretty naturally, the way that you design a paper airplane contest is in fact the scientific method. Go ahead, give me a smiley face emoji in the chat box if these steps make sense. Smiley face emoji in the chat box if these steps make sense. So we have to first make the airplanes, then we have to test them under very similar circumstances, then we have to measure who actually wins. Who actually wins. Excellent. All right, so this is the scientific method. The scientific method is how scientists investigate the world following these basic steps. Now, these steps can be a little bit different depending on the situation, but in general, these are usually the kind of steps that we follow. So first, we need to observe the world around us. And then we see something that we don't understand, and so then we ask a question about the thing that we don't understand. So we make observations, we ask questions about what we observe. From there, we can form a hypothesis, which is an educated guess or a possible answer to our question, often stated in an if-then format. So if this, then this is what I think will be the answer to my question, right? So we made our observations, we asked a question, and we came up with a possible answer, a hypothesis. All right. From there, once you have a hypothesis, you can actually test the hypothesis doing an experiment, assuming it's a testable hypothesis. There are such things that are not testable, in which case they would not follow the scientific method. All right. They would not be a scientific experiment. Okay. So then we base our experiment based on that hypothesis, and we test, is our hypothesis correct? From there, we can get some data and we can analyze our data and we can say, was our hypothesis supported or disproved, right? So we get our data and then we figure out, did it support our data? In which case, yes, that's awesome. We can go ahead and communicate these results. Or do I need to go back and fix my hypothesis? So if I disprove my hypothesis, that means I need to go all the way back to this step, change my hypothesis, my possible answer, and then go ahead and retry out, test this new hypothesis. Go ahead, give me a green check or an orange X if that's beginning to make sense. The scientific method, again, it doesn't always go in this exact order. It doesn't look exactly like this in every scenario, but in general, these are the basic steps. In general, these are the basic steps. Green checks if that makes sense. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and keep on moving here. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually match these up on the board for me. All right, so observation, question, hypothesis. Which of these do you think would best match up with these different things? All right, so I often feel more focused and energetic when I get up and jog in place for a minute. If a person jogs in place for 1 minute before an exam, then they will have a higher test score. Does exercise make your brain work better? Which of these do you think would best match up with these? Observation, question, hypothesis. Get your answers up on the board. Go, go, go. I see Angelina working. I see Tati working. Lino up on the board. Erica up on the board. I see Cody up on the board. Joseph H working. Excellent. See Kamal working up on the board. Let's get some more answers, please. There we go. Let's get Caden up on the board and Alan up on the board. Benjamin and Joseph W. Get your answers up there. Thank you. I see Jayland working. Let's get Noah and Shayna working. Anissa up on the board. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Anissa. Thank you, Shayna. Awesome. All right, everybody, let me go ahead and pause those tools here. I would definitely agree here, right? So the observation is just something that you notice, right? So we notice that when we get up, jog in place for a minute, it often makes us feel more focused. I definitely used this trick a lot when I was in high school on all-nighters when I was trying to write lab reports that were like ridiculous amounts of pages. I would get up and I would jog in place. And that would help wake me up enough so that I could, do my work, all right, at 4 a.m. The question then is, does exercise actually make your brain work better? So I observed this, but I want to know, is this actually a true statement, right? So even though I observed this, this might not actually be true. So the question is, does it actually make our brains work better? And then our hypothesis is, if a person jogs in place for 1 minute before an exam, then they will have a higher test score. Is this something that I can actually do an experiment with? Yes or no? Tell me in the chat box. Could I actually have people jog in place and then look at their test scores? Is that testable? Is that something I can actually do an experiment for? Yeah, absolutely. So this would be an example of a good hypothesis. Great job, everyone. This is going to be the answer to number 2. Go ahead and match those up for me and raise your hands when you are ready to move on. You have 30 seconds. Go, go, go. Raise your hands for number 2. Question number 3 is a complete on your own. All right, so you can go ahead and check your answers with me in the Q&A area. When I say check your answers, you need to tell me what you put so that I can check your answers. Don't just ask me to give you the answers. That's not going to fly because this is a complete on your own. This is you showing me that you're actually learning and paying attention. So question number 3, you need to complete question number 3 on your own. Again, do your best with it. If you want to check any of your answers, I'm in the Q&A area. So same situation here. So observation, question, and hypothesis. All right, so I predict that if an airplane is folded to be thinner, then it will fly further. Which paper airplane will fly the furthest? And paper can be used to make different airplanes, and different models fly different distances. All right, so you need to figure out which of these matches up best with observation, which one matches best with question, and which one matches up with hypothesis. Remember, hypothesis is our educated guess. Educated guess. All right, please work on number 3. You have 45 seconds to work on that. If you need to check your answers, I'm in the Q&A area, but do not put answers in the main chat. Raise your hands for number 3. Raise your hands for number 3. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how we actually set up our experiment, right? So we have our hypothesis. We need to make an experiment based on our hypothesis. So in an experiment, there are what we call variables. So we have an independent variable, a dependent variable, and everything else needs to be kept constant. Everything else needs to be constants. So you can only change one thing at a time. Otherwise, if you try to change multiple things at a time, you don't know what's actually causing the effect that you're getting, okay? So our independent variable, we should only have one independent variable. This is what you intend to change on purpose at the start of the experiment. So this is what the scientist actually does on purpose. This is the cause or the start of our experiment. Smiley faces, emojis in the chat box if that makes sense. Smiley faces, emojis in the chat box if that makes sense. Think about the word independent. Independent means if you're an adult can choose what they want to do. So when we think about the word independent, you should be able to think about you can choose what you want to do. That's what we're doing in an experiment. This is what we choose to change. Dependent variable, on the other hand, if you think about a dependent is like a child. Children can't necessarily choose what they want to do, right? So the dependent variable is reliant on the independent variable. It's the result. So this is going to be the result that you actually measure or gather at the end. This is the data that we're getting to see whether or not our hypothesis was even correct. So dependent variable is what we measure at the end. This is the effect. So cause and effect. Independent variables are cause. We can choose to change it. Dependent variable, we can't really choose to change it. It's something that we're looking at the results of. Okay? Now, everything else must be kept the same. So all experimental variables that are kept the same are what we call constants. And again, the reason we can only change one variable, our independent variable, is because if I were to change two things, then my results, I wouldn't know if that result is because of the first thing or the second thing. So I need to make sure that I'm only changing one independent variable at a time, and everything else needs to be kept constant or the same. Right, to make sure that we're only testing the effects of only the independent variable. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example over here and try this out. A scientist exposed plants to different hours of sunlight and then gathered the final height of the plants. Go ahead and tell me in the chat box, what is our independent variable? What is the scientist choosing to change? The hours of sunlight the plants get or the final height of the plants? Tell me in the chat box. What is the scientist able to control? Yeah, so exactly. So the scientist can like choose to put the plants into the sunlight or take them out of the sunlight, right? That's something that the scientist has control over. So the hours of sunlight is the independent variable. Now the dependent variable is what we're going to measure at the end, the actual data that we want out of this experiment. So tell me in the chat box, what is our dependent variable? What are we measuring at the end of the experiment? Yeah, so the final thing that we're actually measuring, the result, is then the height of the plants. The scientists can't control the height of the plants, right? They can control pretty easily how much sunlight you get by putting it in sun or out of sun, but they can't like physically make the plants grow to a certain height. So that's going to be dependent. It's dependent on what originally happens with our sunlight. So the height of our plants is our result. It's dependent. It's the effect. All right. Now let's go ahead and talk about constants. Constants are everything else that we should keep the same. So tell me in this experiment, what are some things that we should keep the same? What are some things that we should keep the same? So my first example would be I should keep the same the type of plant. All right, so for each of our plants, they should all be the same type of plant. If they're different plants, then I don't know what's causing the change in height, if it's actually the hours of sunlight or the fact that it's a different plant. So we need to have the same type of plant. Tell me what else in the chat box. What other things do you think I would need to keep constant in this experiment? Okay, so we need the same type of plant. What else? Yeah, exactly, Jonathan. So we would need the same type of soil. What else? Go ahead, tell me in the chat box, everybody. Yeah, the amount of water they all get, right? We're not testing water, we're testing sunlight. So we need to make sure water stays the same. Anything else you can think of that we should keep the same? Maybe I would even say like their growth cycle, like they should all start from the same age, right? Or the same seeds, right? Same age, same seeds. Yeah. No, so sunlight would not be, okay, so the strength of the sunlight maybe, but again, we are changing the number of hours of sunlight. So maybe, yeah, we could say maybe strength of sunlight. But again, the hours of sunlight would actually be changing. No, that's fine. That is a good thing to think about, Angelina, right? Because sunlight at dawn is going to be different than sunlight in the middle of the day. So you want to make sure that they're all in the same type of sunlight, even if they're not necessarily getting the same amount of hours of sunlight. Cool. Awesome, everyone. Go ahead, give me a green check or an orange X if this is beginning to make sense. Again, example of independent variable, what we start with, what we control. Dependent variable, what we're measuring, what we end with, our effect. And everything else should be constant. All right, green checks, Angelina, Ellen, Kamal, green checks, Noah, Brianna, Seraphim, Tim, Alicia, Mallory, green checks, everyone. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and do a little bit more practice, and then there will be one that you need to do on your own in your notes. All right, so we're going to go ahead and Oh, sorry, let's actually practice this one first. All right, so let's first match up these definitions on the whiteboard. Independent variable, dependent variable, constants. Which of these definitions make the most sense? So the result that you measure or gather at the end, experimental variables that are kept the same, or what you intend to change on purpose at the start. Again, think about the word independent versus dependent. Go ahead, get your answers up on the board. Go, go, go. Awesome. Let's go ahead. I'll pause those tools and let's take a look at this. We said independent variable. Yes, what you intend to change on the purpose at the start of the experiment, this is what you have control over. Just like an independent person has control over what they can do. Dependent variable, on the other hand, is going to be dependent on our experiment. And so this is the result that we gather at the end. It's our measurement. It's the data that we're trying to get. And constants, remember, are everything else that are kept the same. Everything that's kept constant, the same. All right, this is going to be the answer to number 4. Please make sure you copy this into your notes. Again, I'm giving you the actual answer to number 4. You have 30 seconds to raise your hands for number 4 in your notes. Again, I'm giving you the answer. You should get 100% on this question in your notes. Raise your hands. Go, go, go. Let's go ahead and try these examples together because, again, these are going to be the answers for 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we will go ahead and number 9 you have to try to do on your own based on what you've learned in class. Okay, so 5 groups of potted basil are watered different amounts each day. No water, 50 milliliters of water, 100 milliliters of water, 150 milliliters, and 200 milliliters of water. The number of leaves are counted at the end of the month. Let's do the first row together. So in the chat box, what is our independent variable? What are we changing on purpose and have control over in this experiment? Go ahead and tell me in the chat box. What do I have control over as the scientist? What am I changing on purpose? Awesome. I see Cody starting us off. Let's be specific. What about the water? Yeah, let's be specific. Awesome. So we're saying the water. Again, be specific. What about the water? What about the water? Thank you, Itati. Yeah, exactly. So the amount of water. Amount of water, right? Because otherwise it could be, if you just say water, we could mean like type of water, right? There are some experiments where you can experiment based on like tap water, store-bought water, mountain water, polluted water, right? So specifically here though, we want to test the amount of water. Excellent. So now what would be our dependent variable? What are we measuring the result at the end of our experiment? Go ahead, take a look at our description and tell me, what are we measuring? What's the result we're looking for? No, at no point are we talking about height here. So definitely not height. There is something to do with leaves. Let's be specific. Yeah, exactly. The number of leaves. The number of leaves. Right, so number of leaves on the plant. Perfect. Now, what are some things that we should keep constant? Tell me in the chat box, what are some things that we should keep constant here? What are things that should be the same? Yeah, exactly. So we're going to have a lot of these, right? So type of soil, what else? A lot of these will be similar to the previous example because our previous example was also talking about plants. Yeah, the type of plant, right? In this case, they were all basil plants. What other things should be kept the same in order to make sure that this is a fair test, a fair experiment, fair test? Yeah, this time we're not testing sunlight, so the amount of sun should be the same. Amount of sun should absolutely this time be the same, right? So same amount of sun. Awesome. So those are all great examples of constants. Now let's go ahead. All right, I'm going to give you whiteboard tools. Mark for me on the board, what do you think is the independent variable, dependent variable, and constants for this scenario? A student wants to find out which kind of fish food is the most nutritious. 4 groups of fish get different foods: regular flakes, pellets, freeze-dried shrimp, and bloodworms. Their weight is measured daily. Go ahead and fill it out up on the board. If you see other people with the right answer, you should still put your answer up there because that helps you to practice. Go, go, go. Get your answers up on the board. Erica, Joseph, and Angelina in the chat. Awesome. So it looks like a lot of us are saying food type. Food type. Right, so yes, absolutely. That's our independent variable. Now, again, I need you participating up on the board, please. So please write on the board now, what's our dependent variable? So actually put it on the board. What's our dependent variable? What's our result? We know that we're changing the type of food on purpose. What's our result? Awesome. I see Erica up on the board. Let's get some more answers up there. Awesome. Awesome. I'm seeing some more answers up there. Thank you, Jalen. Yeah, exactly. So the weight of the fish. Perfect. So that's what we are measuring at the end of the experiment. That's our dependent variable. Now, in this experiment, what are some examples of things that would be constants then? Go ahead, tell me in the chat box. I'll put them up on the board for us so that we don't run out of space. What would be the constants here? What things should we keep the same? Yeah, exactly. So they should each get the same amount of food, right? So even though they're getting different types of food, right, we don't want to feed one a whole bunch of food and then not feed the other one enough food, right? Yeah, so absolutely the same amount of food. What else? Well, no, the kinds of food does need to change. We did say that that's our independent variable, so that should not be kept constant, right? But let's say like the kind of fish. Yeah, so the type of fish should be the same. The groups of fish should be the same size. Awesome. Yeah, exactly. So those are all things that should be constants. This is going to be the answers to 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, so the independent variable for the basil scenario is the amount of water. The dependent variable is the number of leaves. The independent variable for the fish example is the type of fish food. And the dependent variable is the weight. Go ahead, and I should have said weight of fish, but you know what I meant, weight of fish. All right, so go ahead and answer 5, 6, 7, and 8 and raise your hand, and then I will explain how to do number 9. Please work quickly, because again, that took 5 minutes of our passing period, so please work quickly. You have 30 seconds to answer 5, 6, 7, and 8. Go, go, go. Everyone, so this last one you need to be able to complete on your own based on what we just practiced, I think 3 times. All right, so this time 4 groups of corn are given different types of natural fertilizer: fish emulsion, worm castings, cow manure compost, and no fertilizer. The height of the corn is measured each week. So we need to figure out what's our independent variable, what's our dependent variable, and what are the things that are constants. Remember, independent variable is what you change on purpose. Dependent variable is what you measure at the end. Result you measure at the end. And constants are things that you keep the same. Keep the same. All right. So just so you know, there's more than one constant. All right. That's why we have 5 options over here. So constants, there's going to be more than one. Okay, so please work on question number 9. If you want to check your answers, I'm in the Q&A area. I'll go ahead and give you 45 seconds to work on this one and raise your hands. Go, go, go. Please make sure that you answer question number 10 here as well, saying that you understand that you need to be working on projects. All right, at this point, you should actually be able to do slide number 8 of your project. So if you want to take a look at that, feel free to fill that out. Otherwise, you're also welcome to wait until Thursday, our project work day, to work on that as well. All right, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much. Make sure you submit your notes, and I will see you all later. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.